it was a sense of urgency, and the library's closed on Monday, so I couldn't do it here Monday. My name is John Eppolito. I'm a former K-12 teacher. Most of you guys know me. I taught for 6 years. I have 4 children in the system, and I spent way too much time studying this. The format, I would like to get through the presentation. I can do it in under 20 minutes. I'll shoot for 15, but I don't know, and then ask questions after. So if you have questions on a particular slide, there's a number in the bottom right. Mark it down or hold on. Try to remember it. And for the opt-out forms, for those of you that haven't opted out yet and want to, I have a bunch of the forms here. So just pass those around and then leave the extras up there on that table, and you guys can let people know as they come maybe where the opt-out forms are. Okay, this presentation is based on facts. Most of the supporting documentation is in the blue, and it's links. And after the presentation, I will make this available via a PDF. So anybody who wants it that asks for the email, I'll email it out. So you'll have everything. You won't get everything I'm going over right now, but you'll have the presentation. You can look at it later, show your friends, study it, try to dispute it, whatever. I'm not going to talk much about Common Core. Most of this is about the testing and the data tracking. The one thing I will say, when these standards were first released, 500 early childhood health and education professionals signed a letter to the people who now hold the copyright for Common Core. And what they basically said was, these standards are developmentally inappropriate. And they asked for the NGA, the National Governors Association, and the Chief Counsel of State School Officers, our Superintendent of Instruction, Dale Urquiaga, they asked to cease writing these standards. Their letter was ignored. In fact, what they did was, in their copyright, first of all, it's very rare for education standards to be copywritten. In their copyright, they tried to protect themselves. So I'm going to read the section that's in red. Under no circumstances shall the NGA or CCSSO be liable for any damages, even if advised of the possibility of such risk and potential damage, which they were. 500 experts advised them that these standards aren't appropriate. So what the governors did is, okay, we don't want to be responsible. So they limited their liability in their copyright. It's very sleazy. After the standards were written and the people responsible were protected, then the federal government spent $360 million. They spent that with 2 testing consortiums, the SBAC and the PARCC, to develop the tests that we're taking now. The SBAC is what Nevada went with. So today, in the United States, about half of the Common Core states, about 21 states, are started using these tests now for spring testing. It's either SBAC or PARCC. These tests are designed to assess standards that are developmentally inappropriate, according to these 500 experts, at least in grades K through 3. That's what these experts complained about. By the way, I want to acknowledge a couple people that are here. There's 3 members of our board, Nevadans Against Common Core, me, Pat Lynch, and Don Gallimore. Raise your hands, please. And then there's, from Brent Jones's office, there's Jeremy Edgel.
Senator Jones apologizes for not being able to be here today. As I'm sure you all know, all the bills are, the deadline is today for the Senate and the Assembly, so they're actually still in floor session right now.
Thank you for being here, everybody who could make it too. And I know there's stuff going on. Okay, according to the SBAC's own website, this test is designed, I say, to fail 2/3 of the children. Some people don't like the use of that word, but I'll show you what this is. This is from the SBAC's website. The red and yellow, the grades are at the bottom. About 2/3 of the kids are not going to be proficient after this test. This is what the SBAC is telling us. And in low-income areas, it's much higher. So, and here's the way they define it. I'm not going to go into this too much, but you'll have the presentation afterwards if you ask. There's some more chairs up here, you guys. Basically, anyone that's at level red needs a lot of improvement, and anyone that's at level 2 may require further development for success. And this is for 6th graders. They're starting to say for college. I don't know. So that was the math. In the English language arts, it's pretty much the same. 2/3 of the kids will fail the test. They'll be red or yellow. And in some areas, it's been much higher. Low-income areas, it's higher than 2/3. So there's the definitions, but again, I'm going to try to keep this to 15 minutes. I don't know how they know if a 6th grader is not going to be ready for credit-bearing classes in college when they're in 6th grade. Heck, with this stuff, I'd have never got out of 3rd grade. Many people think this test is really designed to fabricate a crisis in United States public education. This whole thing is not to, it's nothing to do, it's not going to help the children. It's designed for the testing companies, the curriculum specialists, all these people to just make more money. When the kids fail the test and they have to take it again in some places, it's designed to fabricate a crisis. According to the Kings Beach 4th grade teacher and an Incline Middle School administrator, the SBAC, and this is a quote from the two people, will take 10 hours for 4th graders and 9 hours for 6th through 8th graders. Put a 4th grader in front of a computer for 10 hours, I don't care if you spread it out over 2 weeks, all it is a waste of time. It's not going to tell us anything. We're not going to have the test results till next year anyway. Not only that, this is a secret computer adaptive test. When your kid sits in front of that computer, they're going to be in front of it for a total of 10 hours. You don't know what questions they're being asked. And this becomes a problem in just a minute. So the only ones that get to see the test are the people actually taking it. The victims, the students. Also, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week during the entire testing window, which has already started, SBAC will be spying on our children's social media accounts. They call it listening and monitoring. And they do that in the name of testing security. We wouldn't want these 3rd graders posting the test question out there, so we have to spy on their accounts 24/7 during the full testing window. Last year, during the field tests, the SBAC published a document titled, and this is the title of the document, Guidance for Social Media Monitoring During the Field Test. The second sentence of that document said, the consortium is closely monitoring social media networks for security breaches. We don't want that 3rd grader to post something about the test. Now the PARCC, the only other federally funded consortium, is also spying on the student social media accounts. In fact, they were the first ones who got caught. Catherine, this is really interesting. In New Jersey, what happened was there was a PARCC got caught spying on a child. So what the New Jersey Department of Ed said in their official statement, quote, the New Jersey Department of Ed informed us Pearson is monitoring all social media during PARCC testing. So now the parents want to go after PARCC, and the full thing is right here. I won't go into the full thing, but it's very interesting. This is a letter from the superintendent of the affected district to other superintendents in the state. And you'll have a copy of all this. Here's how Pearson does it. The day that this came out, this was up on TRAC's website. That's what they use to monitor the children. The next day it was gone. Good thing I took a screenshot while it was up, because you can't get this anymore. The second biggest teachers union in the country has a petition titled, Tell Pearson to Stop Spying on Our Kids. But what about the SBAC? We're using the SBAC in this state. The Smarter Balance, and this is an article that was published about last week, quote, Smarter Balance, this was published in Politico. Smarter Balance told Politico that they do exactly what Pearson does. Scan the web for any breaches in security, such as a photo of a test question or a Facebook post describing an essay prompt. So now it's fair game for these entities to monitor us 24/7 during testing. Now they haven't said they're not going to monitor us when testing's over. All they've said is that they're going to monitor the kids 24/7 during testing. If you really want to see how inappropriate this test is, watch this 10-minute video. This is a teacher back east who asked to be reassigned during Common Core testing. Try to get through this without getting choked up. We're not going to do this now. It takes 10 minutes. You'll have this. Here's what we have with SBAC. It's based on developmentally inappropriate standards. It's designed to fail 2/3 of the children. It will not be graded and returned to Nevada until next school year. So it's nothing about improving student learning. The test can't do anything to change inappropriate standards. The standards are copywritten and can't be changed by anyone in Nevada. Up to 50% of Nevada teacher evaluations will be determined by different aspects of these test scores. Total score, improvement, different things related to the test scores. We know that they're going to be monitoring our kids 24/7 during the testing. The students will be testing for about 10 hours, plus all the time spent in Las Vegas. They've tried numerous days to go in and take the test, and they can't take the test. This thing is going to probably, I don't know how many tens, or I don't know if it'll get to 100 hours, but definitely tens of hours wasted trying to take this inappropriate test. It's going to fail the kids anyway. It's not for the kids. Remember, most of the people that came up with this and are pushing this, their kids aren't in it. President Obama's kids aren't in it. Arnie Duncan's kids aren't in it. Bill Gates' kids aren't in it. Brian Sandoval's kids aren't in it. All the people that work at these testing consortiums that are high-ranking, their children aren't in it. This is not for their children. This is for our children. The SBAC has been deemed unconstitutional in at least one state so far, Missouri. And this is probably going to, I don't know what's going to happen in the future, but I know there's at least 6 or 7 other states looking at the constitutionality of SBAC. And the biggest thing of all is the Nevada Department of Ed. This is why the administrators at your schools won't tell you about this. The Nevada Department of Ed has threatened that all schools in the state, and they sent out a memo, and it said, quote, if you do not have 95% participation in the test, your school will automatically be a one-star school. I just heard that in Incline Middle School, we're at 6% opt-out, so we're going to be a one-star school, evidently. I feel bad for Sharon that she's got me. She's nice. I like her. I feel bad, but I feel more concerned for the kids than I do the administrators, the teachers. There are teachers all over the country that are starting to speak up about this. Teachers can speak up anytime they want. I know they're afraid to get fired, and in some places this is probably happening, but the kids are number one, not the adults. Okay, now the bad news. The collecting, storing, and sharing personally identifiable information can now happen without parent consent. And the way this can happen, well, first of all, here's what Arnie Duncan, this is the Secretary of Education, here's what he said back in 2009, the U.S. Secretary of Education.
And hopefully someday we can track children from preschool to high school, from high school to college, and college to career.
He wants to track children from preschool to career. I don't know if I want him tracking my children from preschool to career. Do you want him tracking your children? He works for the government and he's here to help you. Okay, how did this happen? We used to have something called FERPA, Family Education Rights and Privacy Act. That used to protect children. And there's still a lot of people that will say, well, there's FERPA to protect us. Not anymore. Will someone please let Betsy in? Not anymore. Back in 2008, the beginning gutting of FERPA happened under President Bush. And this is according to the Homeschool Legal Defense, either association or fund, the attorney. He said, quote, these new regulations reinterpreted FERPA to allow state school districts and schools themselves to share personally identifiable information from student records without parental notice or consent. So what this means now, end quote. Basically, third parties that have a contract with an educational agency can get access to the personally identifiable information on your children. And there's a couple things I still need to straighten out, but that part we get from him. Now, step 2 of FERPA being gutted, well, this was being discussed back in 2011. The ACLU sent a letter to the U.S. Department of Ed, and in this letter it said, quote, these changes pose serious privacy concerns. Personally identifiable information, student records include extremely sensitive information about individuals. Furthermore, the expansion of access to student records could eventually lead to sharing among states. If this were to happen, it could lead to the creation of an immense database holding sensitive information about most Americans. There must be no creation of a national student database. That's what ACLU warned about in 2011. This is exactly what's happening in 46 states in the United States right now, including the state of Nevada. Now, Step 2 of FERPA being gutted, that happened under President Bush. It took the Republicans plus the Democrats to totally screw this up, by the way. It wasn't just one side that did this. In 2011, under President Bush, the regulations governing FERPA were rewritten, allowing for the disclosure of personally identifiable information without parent consent to any outside organization for research. The new regulations allowed non-government actors to be identified as authorized representatives so they could have access to PII. And the link that proves that is right here. And again, all this stuff is documented and the link is on all these pages, all these blue links. So at the end of 2011, FERPA was gutted. After that, this unprecedented storage, tracking, and sharing of student data is now allowed without prior parent consent. This is very problematic, and this is why we're in the bind we're in now. This gutting of FERPA allowed the statewide longitudinal data systems. Nevada's is called the Nevada Statewide Longitudinal Data System. We took $10 million from the federal government to create this database to track your children. This is the same database that allows your children's teacher to be evaluated by your kids' test scores. Once FERPA was gutted, then the federal government spent another $612 million to ensure that 46 states all had the exact same statewide longitudinal data systems. And this is from their website, the National Center for Education Statistics, and what they're asking for is 400 points of data to be collected on every child. But you've got to remember, that's 400 points of data. Now, when you're right at the beginning of those 400 points of data, and you could go there to that link and you could look up these 400 points, right at the beginning it's under the A's, like activities. Under activities, there's 100 things that they want to know about your kid in high school. Did they play softball? Were they in band? Were they in AP Calculus? There's 100 things under one of those 400 points, and one of the 400 points had 200 under it. I can't remember what it was, though. But if you're interested, you can find it there at that link. Right after FERPA was gutted, the Reno Gazette-Journal interviewed Washoe County School District 2 times, within like 2 days. I don't know why they put the article in 2 parts. But what Washoe County School District said was, quote, this is what's going to be collected on the children. Quote, everything you know will be documented starting in kindergarten. Discipline files and special concerns, information about a home life, other personal information, end quote. This is what the school district was bragging they were going to be able to track to the Reno Gazette-Journal. Now, according to the Data Quality Campaign, and this is another thing that Bill Gates funded, he is the largest private funder of Common Core, over $2 billion so far. He's really big in this data. He's, I think, over 13 million so far. Right now, today, in Nevada's SANE, it's more like insane, Nevada's tracking system, and it's tied in with Infinite Campus, they are collecting about 200 points of data on every child. And to see that data, you just go to that link, the lower one, and then you look up at the same data directory in the upper right. The thing that comes up the most is discipline. They want to know if your child got suspended, got sent to the office, psychological, did someone recommend that your child see a counselor, did your child see the counselor? We don't know the implications of having all this data yet. And it's a dark subject. I'm the messenger. I'm sorry. I spent way too much time on this. If you think how you feel right now, that's how I feel a lot of days. About 4 o'clock in the morning when I start looking at this. Okay, so less than 2 months after FERPA was gutted, here was Joe Hart's report back in January 2012.
Nevada's Department of Education is receiving a $4 million grant. This grant will allow the department to follow individual students' progress from pre-kindergarten through high school all the way to the workforce. The system will help direct students to the type of college or career-ready jobs and into a field which will allow them a successful outcome for both the student and their state.
It's designed to follow individual students and provide a successful outcome for the student and the state. Joe Hart didn't pick these words. Those were written for him. And that's exactly what this does. It's about directing our kids. And it's the individual kids. Now, this will conflict with what the superintendent of public instruction says, but I'll tell you one thing right now. First of all, the superintendent of public instruction is not an educator. He's a politician. Second of all, Arne Duncan and President Obama are the ones who want this. I believe that Arne Duncan and President Obama will get what they want, and Dale Urquiaga will have another job in a couple of years. This is very problematic, everything that's happening right now. In this statewide longitudinal data system, make no mistake, this is not just K-12. This is it starts in preschool, then it's K-12, then it's college, then it's workforce. This is why people call it cradle to grave. We have never had this in the United States. Now we have the ability. The federal government has put $1 billion in so far. Remember the $600,000 so that all the states had the same database, and then the $612 million plus the $360 million for the testing, and I'll try to tie that link in just a second. What does the testing have to do with the data collection? It's the SBAC who has to share your child's data with the world. It's not the state, and it's not the Washoe County School District. According to Washoe County School District, when a kid sits down to take that SBAC, their personal, that new number that your child has that they didn't have a few years ago, that new number is already loaded on the computer when your kid sits down to take that test. That comes from Washoe County School District. Sandy Arrett, I think is her name. So this is why it's problematic, because of the contract that the SBAC and PARCC have with the U.S. Department of Education that says that any and all data the SBAC collects, they have to make available to the world. The federal government, Pearson Education, almost anybody that has anything to do with education or asks for it, except the parents. Almost anybody can get access to that data that SBAC has. And that's the exact quote. The quote, the SBAC is required to provide timely and complete access to any and all data collected at the state level, and then to everybody. We'll never know who's gained access to our children's data. That's the scariest thing of all. Okay, every state that's giving this SBAC or PARCC, there's numerous protests, there's parents and students walking out, there's every place that they're giving this is problematic. New York is a couple years ahead of us. According to AP, up to 70% of students in some districts are opting out of Common Core testing. That just came out a couple days ago. The district, 70% of the kids in the district aren't taking the test. They're 2 years ahead of us. We're going to be up to over 5% next year, I'm sure of it. I think we're over 5% now in Incline Middle School. Good job. One paper reported at least one district had, and I think this was a local paper, over 80% of the students in one district opted out of this test. The higher income areas are seeing more kids opting out. Washington Post reported the other day that New York State is up to 14% opt out, and they haven't given the math test yet. So I don't know what they're going to be up to, but it's over 5%. That's regular math, not Common Core math. The president of the largest teachers union in New York State suggested parents opt their children out of the Common Core test. And the second largest teachers union in the country, she supports parents who opt out of the test. And by the way, the two testing consortiums that have to share your children's data with the world, half the Common Core states have already backed out of SBAC or PARCC. Nevada hasn't yet. So the Nevada Department of Ed, how are we doing on time? I've got a story about the $10,000. You guys want to hear that? 10 minute? No, we're not going to see the 10-minute movie. All right, we could, if we have internet. I don't know if we have internet. All right, the data, $10,000. The state, I wanted to see my kids' data because I know that it's going to be shared with others. So the state first said it's going to cost me $10,000. There's the letter. Then they came back and they said, oh no, even if you pay the $10,000, you can't see your kids' data because we don't know if you're really their parents. Then they got the U.S. Department of Education involved, and the U.S. Department of Ed said, no, you got to let the guy see his kids' data. You can't charge him. So then I went to see my kids' data. My wife and I spent 3.5 hours in Carson City going over our kids' data. Okay, on our two older children, there were over 30 erroneous addresses associated with my two older children. The state didn't know why. My younger children, who've only been in Nevada schools for 1 year, had at least 6 erroneous addresses associated with them. Then there was a bunch of coded information that the state tells me are test scores. And then I asked the state, well, how can you guarantee me that that coded information is for my kids and not for one of those other 30 kids? Well, I guess we really can't, but we're pretty sure it is. So that's the first 4 kids in the state that were tested have a whole bunch of bad data. And then the Nevada Department of Ed had the nerve to tell the Reno Gazette, or the Review Journal, quote, that Nevada Department of Ed is not aware of any bug in the system, any bug or system issue that would cause data inaccuracies, and that when it becomes aware that any of its records are incorrect, it takes steps to correct that information. So we're collecting data on 400,000 kids in this state. The first 4 that were tested were not even close to being accurate, and they say there's nothing wrong. So the best thing that Judy Osgood, she works for the Department of Ed, can come up with is we're not aware of any bugs or inaccuracies. So they promised me they would fix it for my children. I didn't even go in to check, because even if they fix it today, who knows what it's going to be next week or next month or next year. The best case is assume all the data is accurate. Then you've only got those 200 points of data to worry about, and some of that is PII. And we don't know how or when that gets shared with the world. We know the federal government wants it. We know that they paid $1 billion to make sure that they get it, but Dale Urquiaga says, oh, he's going to protect you. He's not going to protect you. He's not even going to be here. Wasn't there another guy, Heath Morrison, that was going to do everything? Where's Heath Morrison now? Where's Pedro Martinez now? These guys are gone, and we're still here. What's his name? I already forgot. Dale Urquiaga is going to be gone too soon, and we're still going to be here. And it's our kids' data. His kids are grown. His kids aren't going to be affected by this. Governor Sandoval's kids aren't affected by this. Our kids are affected by this. There's 2 issues. One is the fact that the state has all this data. And we already know that they don't know if it's right or not. They know it's wrong for my 4 kids. We don't know about the other 400,000 kids. And the fact that they're sharing it with the world. Doesn't matter if it's right, they have to share it. Okay, so the best case is, well, I don't know what the best case really is. I know this, no one can guarantee that this data is safe from hackers. I think 2 weeks ago, Aetna just sent us something, they got into our records, Target. Every month you hear about a big data breach, and there's been several. Number 4, there have been several small data breaches around the country at schools. We don't know the implications of having all this student data out there, and it seems like the people that are supposed to be protecting us aren't. And it's not a matter of if there's going to be a large student data breach, it's just a matter of when. And we all know that. And Dale Urquiaga will not guarantee your student data is safe. He'll spend 10 minutes talking about what they're doing. And then if you ask him, can you guarantee me it's safe? He can't say yes, because nobody can. Tom Considine, we've had him at a couple meetings, and he's a data security expert from Nevada. There's no way, especially the way Nevada does, and especially now with these delays in tests and all this. Oh yeah, the data quality campaign, at least 13 million. Almost everybody supporting Common Core has been paid by Bill Gates. And who's that other conservative guy that's on? Bennett, Dick Bennett, Bill Bennett. He's paid to support Common Core too. So what we have in Nevada, we had SB 28, and that was a student data collection bill, but that died. What we still have in Nevada is SB 463. It's supposed to protect student data. I don't know if it really does or not. I think it's better than what we have now, which is nothing. And Ben Swan is a reporter from the Midwest. On his website, there's an article titled, quote, "The most dangerous domestic spying program is Common Core." And again, I know that this is a dark subject. And you know what? I don't like it either. I'm the messenger. I'm just trying to get the word out so that people know what's going on. And this bill is probably a good bill, SB 463. It passed unanimously today? Seth is a paid lobbyist by somebody. It used to be Elaine Wood. Now remember, let me say something before Seth speaks up. Seth is on the other side of our issue, but Seth is also paid by people who, I don't know, I'm doing this for free, I know that. The governor appointed billionaire Elaine Wynn to be president of the school board. She's not an educator. He brought in his good childhood friend Dale Urquiaga to be superintendent of public instruction, didn't they have to change the rules so he could get the job, or was that paid?
He got a master's degree that they
He's not an educator either. The governor appointed him to be in charge of all our schools. He is the worst one of all in this whole thing, I'll tell you right now, is Superintendent Urquiaga. And this is all led by the governor. You know, it's really bad. We are making a difference, and anyway, here's what you can do to help. We have a red box right here. We are doing our best to stop this on hardly anything. So I'm going to start passing this around. If you're able to put something in there, please do. Opt out. The opt-out forms were up here on the table a little bit ago. And you can get them from your school district, Washoe County. But again, they're not telling you about it because they don't want to be a one-star school. We have a mailing list and a petition. The petition is up here on the counter. There's a clipboard right there, Dave. Will you hand that clipboard around with a pen? If you're against this, if you add your email address, I'll add you to the mailing list. If you just want to be on the mailing list but don't want to sign the petition, sign on the back. But make sure I can read your email address. And SB 70, reach out to the legislators and the governor, because these are the people that can make the difference. On Monday, SB 75, and this is a SBAC testing. It's got to do with the testing. And at one point, we're still not sure, but Superintendent Urquiaga at the 11th hour may try to stick an addendum in there, forcing all of us into testing next year, because right now in Nevada, there is no protection. There's nothing that says you have to take the test. There's nothing that says you can opt out of the test. So we have districts in the state, all the the two big districts say you can opt out, Washoe and Clark. They just didn't tell the parents you could. But there are a couple small districts, Douglas and Churchill County, they're saying you cannot opt out of the test. So this SB 75 that comes up for hearing on Monday, it goes to the other house. It already passed one. Monday at 3:15. We don't know if Superintendent Urquiaga is going to try something to force the SBAC testing. What we would like to see is some language in there to allow us to opt out of the testing like they have in California. Because if you can get out of the testing, that's at least a little safer for your kids. And you can find us here on NevadansAgainstCommonCore.com and the Facebook page, Nevadans Against Common Core. And I think Pat, one of our directors, wanted to say a couple words.